Celtics Beat is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
All right, what's up? Welcome in, Celtics Beat, and finally, I don't want to call the regular season a slog or anything like that. It's fun. I enjoy the regular season. I really do. I am one of the people that enjoys the journey to the destination. I don't wish away time saying, they're going to be there. Let's just fast forward. No, it's fun, but I got to admit, it's pretty fun when we get to this point. A 57-win regular season in the rearview mirror, I would call it, though some would disagree in the media. I've heard it, but a successful regular season for the Celtics. I know they weren't the 1 seed, but it was a success. But now really all that matters is what happens, hopefully over the next captivating 2 months into June, that we can enjoy all of this. We will see. We know it will be the Boston Celtics and the Atlanta Hawks, shockingly enough, in round one beginning Saturday afternoon. I am Adam Kaufman. As you can see if you're watching, and I am telling you if you're listening, there is no Evan Valenti. He's on vacation, and it will be just him next week when I am on vacation. So we'll work together again come round two, hopefully. Chris Forsberg is here, NBC Sports Boston. Seth Landman, a contributor to this program every once in a while, a consistent part of the text thread that Evan and I have, talking hoops all the time. And of course, you may have seen his stuff years ago at ESPN covering fantasy hoops. Gentlemen, it is great to see you, great to talk with you, great to preview playoff hoops with you. Welcome.
I'm going to celebrate that it was episode 508. That's my area code out here.
Right. There you go.
So
yeah, that's a Massachusetts special.
Yeah, well, how fitting that we get to talk playoffs and just all things Massachusetts and the Boston Celtics here in this podcast. Listen, I think a lot more of this show will be about the Celtics, obviously, than it will be about the Atlanta Hawks. If we wanted to do a deep dive on the Hawks, I would have had a Hawks beat writer here, but that's not what people come here for this show for. It's big picture stuff as it relates to the Boston Celtics. And I said it off the top. I will harp on it probably multiple times. I'm shocked. I am shocked that the Miami Heat are not the first round opponent. I am shocked not just that the Heat lost, but that they went out and treated that play-in game with the Hawks like it was the second leg of a back-to-back in mid-December. They just looked like they did not care. They played like crap. The Hawks, who have been a team that have been laughed at throughout the majority of this season, are now in the actual postseason, Chris. And it's not a team. What's the right way to put this? I am one of many, probably you guys as well, but I'll get your opinions. Definitely fans that are listening, because I've seen the tweets in my mentions. People are taking this series for granted. They are calling for a sweep. I am calling for a gentleman's sweep. I think the Celtics will take this thing in 5. I've already put money on the Celtics taking this thing in 5. I've also put money on Boston winning this, minus 2.5 games. I think this is going to be a comfortable series victory for the Celtics, but I do recognize there's Trae Young. I do recognize there's DeJounte Murray. I do recognize there's Clint Capella. I recognize there's some good young talent on that team. There's John Collins as well. And I also, above all of that, recognize that this is a Celtics team that has a kind of a penchant for taking teams for granted. And I hope, Chris, that the Celtics do not allow themselves to take this series for granted in the same way that their fans and many in the media already are.
yeah, well, you nailed it, right? Like, if you have one concern with this team, it's they dominated the best in basketball throughout the course of 82 games. But for whatever reason, those Orlando Magic and Utah Jazz and everybody else along the way were the speed bumps. And so I do agree. I think the only thing that can and I don't even think it can fell the Celtics in this series, but it can trip them up a little bit, is if they kind of come out and just assume they're going to win. And I don't suspect they will. I hope, as you said, they've learned from their regular season transgressions, and they should have motivation. It's just, you start looking at it. You said you listed you started your list of worries with Trae Young. That probably shouldn't be the most worrisome on your list, because the Celtics have exploited him defensively time and time again. And all you need to do is rewind to, what was it, March, when the Celtics were down there and he had a little kick of the foot towards Marcus Smart's groin. I think Marcus Smart will have some extra motivation coming into this series. If he didn't already want to reestablish himself as sort of an all defense type of guy, then this series will allow him to flourish there. And so it's hard for me to just see a way that, and I don't want to be overconfident, but I just don't understand. I don't see the roadmap for the Hawks. And so they're going to have to show me something here in the early stages of this series. I just think the Celtics are too talented. And isn't it ironic that after all the hand wringing about, oh, they fell to the number 2 seed and they're going to draw the big bad Heat, and now you get maybe the most advantageous draw out of the potential play-in team. So, maybe I'll give Joe all the credit and say he knew that this was the way it was going to map out. He just had to let the Bucks rip off a 20-game winning streak to go ahead and get there.
Listen, not to slight a fan favorite, but what the hell? He's not listening. Isaiah Thomas was Gary Payton, standing next to Trae Young at this point. The Celtics should have no problem with Trae Young on that end, to your point, but he can catch fire offensively. And if the Celtics allow themselves, and I think that is the right way to put it, if they allow themselves to get a little bit lazy, Trae Young could have multiple 40-point games in this series, Seth. So, how do you guard against, not literally, like not on the floor guarding against, how do you mentally or emotionally or psychologically guard against a letdown if you're Joe Mazzulla? Or is it a point where we've had this conversation a number of times on and off air, where coaching, when you have a very talented team, a contending team, can be a little bit overrated across the NBA. This is not just Boston. Across the NBA, coaching doesn't matter as much when your team is stacked. So is it up to Joe, or is it up to the players to recognize, hey, like we got a job to do here. We don't need anyone to tell us how to do it.
Well, I mean, if you think, it seems like they underachieved at times this year, which is weird to say about a team that just won 57 games. But if they underachieved, it is this thing, like compared to other teams in the league, they did a great job playing against the other great teams in the league, and they struggled against mediocre teams and bad teams. And I would say okay, so one of the stats I was looking at is that the Celtics were first in defensive rebounding this year. But it's weird because the Celtics don't have, the best rebounder on the team is Rob. I know, Chris, I know you love him.
Oh, yeah.
But
I'll get my bobblehead.
Compared to other teams, most other teams have at least one rebounder who's a more dominant rebounder than Rob, kind of. So, but the Celtics do it as a team effort. And I think it's the kind of thing where, they're first in the league at defensive rebounding, but Miami's a great defensive rebounding team who rebounds kind of in a similar gang rebounding way to the way we do. And the Hawks just got a billion offensive rebounds and beat them the other night. So I do think, and the Hawks are talented. So I'm like Chris, I'm not worried about Trae specifically. Actually, I think Murray is a scarier matchup for us in a lot of ways. But if there's a weakness here, it's when the Celtics don't play their hardest, that rebounding thing that's been a strength all year becomes a little mediocre, and Capella and Collins start crashing the glass. Maybe that's a way the Hawks take a couple games. We've been Celtics fans long enough to remember that we lost 3 games to the Hawks in 2008. So it's I don't know. It's just, you never know what even that team lost 3 games to a mediocre Hawks team. So
because it took them for granted.
Yeah. Yeah.
This right here, to go full circle, right? This is the Al Horford Bowl, Chris. So, I realize that, the names and faces and hell, the jerseys have changed a lot in the, however many years it's been since 2008. I don't feel like doing the math, but this is, look, this is what the Celtics wanted. If you were to, not that they would have admitted it, but if you were to ask any of them to a man going into that play-in game between the Heat and Hawks, what are you rooting for? We want to play Atlanta. It's what anyone in the media would have told you, obviously, was the preference. And, to now be here at this point against a team that you won handedly against 3 times in the regular season, won by an average of 13 points. I guess I'm just, short of injury or health concerns, which are unpredictable to some degree, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But other than that, is what is it about the Celtics, that could stand in their way? I started to chuckle because I wanted to say themselves, right? It's themselves. They can beat themselves if they just play their game. This really shouldn't be much of a series.
No, and again, the Hawks are excellently talented on the offensive end, and they can get Trey go nuts, and they can crash the glass. They have plenty of like nice little parts that would work if they had more top end talent. And unfortunately, just the Celtics have lived this. You have small guards who are offensive minded. It's really hard to win titles with those guys. And that's no disrespect to Kemba and Isaiah. As you said, they were probably better individual defenders than Trae Young. And so I think they're going to exploit that matchup. I think they're going to do everything they can to just like make Trae's life difficult, trap him, have Marcus just hound him. And then you live with what like the supporting cast probably isn't going to beat you. And if they do, it'll be once, so it's just as you said, it really tipped in their favor. At least you feel like this is a team that just can't really stop you defensively. And if the Celtics play anywhere near the level they did at the start of the year or even the end of the year, I mean, the second best offense in the league, it's going to be really hard for Atlanta to keep up with them. And I hate being overconfident and like just feeling like you're going to roll. And not, even beyond the Celtics struggle in that instance, because it just feels wrong. Like teams in the NBA are good, and you're supposed to show up. And Quin Snyder has been through, the playoffs with those Utah teams, and it's not going to be like just a complete laugher. But you just look at the matchups, and it's hard to again game plan where the Atlanta could. This isn't Al Horford and Josh Smith and whoever else was on that. I'm tempted to
Dennis
Google.
Schroeder on that team.
You know what? I think that was later, but
later.
I need to.
How long he's been around? Feels like forever.
A little later.
Remember, there's been multiple Al versus the Celtics series. The one
That's true.
Actually that 2015 year or 2016, 2015, I think it was when they recruited Al essentially because he was so blown away by how crazy fans were in Boston for that Isaiah Thomas year that he came in and him and Jay Crowder sort of spurred everything. Yeah. So I don't know if there's any Hawks you want to recruit this year. Maybe they're putting out feelers. As I think Seth said perfectly, I'm more worried about the DeJounte Murrays and like their bench has been pretty good, having Bogdanovich and Okongwu, and I worry a little bit more about that than I necessarily do any of their starters. The bottom line is I was down there for that last Atlanta game, and like the first 5 minutes felt like an all-star game because no one played any defense. But Jaylen and Jason are going to get whatever they want, and I know they got wings. I don't know how they're not very good defending wings, at least not that night. And I just think if this Celtics team is engaged, it's okay to feel pretty confident going in.
Quick break to tell you guys today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official partner of Major League Baseball. And new customers in Massachusetts can get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston. Finally, you all now bet on favorite sports, money line to point spreads, player props, and a whole bunch more. Also, NFL draft coming up in a few weeks. Patriots, first player drafted, the position, can you call it? Obviously, the big three: cornerback, offensive line, wide receiver. Cornerback, plus 250. Offensive lineman plus 250. Wide receiver plus 300. Quarterback plus 1,200. Now, I don't think they'll get rid of Mac, but if Anthony Richardson were there, that'd be an interesting dilemma maybe for the Patriots. I don't know. I like Mac. I'm a big Mac guy. I'm Team Mac. I'd rather just have Mac than take somebody else. It seems like that's the way they're going to go, but you never know with the Patriots. So bet on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Do not miss your chance to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Visit FanDuel today. That's FanDuel.com/Boston to make every moment more. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball.
I am glad you brought up Quin Snyder, though. Is there can we say that Atlanta has the coaching advantage going into this series, even if it maybe doesn't matter because the talent disparity is so large?
I love that Seth shook his head immediately like, no.
I mean, he's been coaching the team for how long now?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
No, I just mean the fact that he and not necessarily an advantage in that like he knows all the ins and outs of the Hawks, but I just, like Chris said, he's been through the ringer. He's coached multiple playoff series for the Jazz. He's more established. He's done it, versus Joe, who's going through it for the first time.
I just think like Joe went through, we went to the finals with Joe as an assistant coach of this same roster, basically. Like, and they play, if anything, the Celtics this year have like doubled down on a lot of what they did last year. They've become like a more extreme version of the team they were last year. Like, we shot a lot of threes and played a certain style of defense under Ime. And I would say we're shooting even more threes and playing even more that style of defense. Like, I know the defense hasn't been quite as locked in this year, but like we never foul. We get all the defensive rebounds. Like, there are these like strategic things. And I think, I don't know, there's like I guess there's like the end of game stuff you could maybe quibble with, but I just, like the Hawks are going to go to Trey at the end of games. We're going to go to Tatum at the end of games. Like, they're going to get the shots they get. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I really don't.
I always say we, but be careful. Like, the Celtics are going to go to like Sam Hauser in the final minutes when it's 30-point game, and maybe like JD Davison is going to be your late game option if these games go the way I expect.
You
them
are
to.
Confident.
Yeah, and I need more JD to Luke in crunch time to make this a breezy series. The one thing I will say, this series will make Quin Snyder miss guys like Donovan Mitchell who do it on both ends and who are playoff tested. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens after this. Like, it was always going to be a very interesting offseason for Atlanta, even before they, surprisingly won this. But depending on how this series goes, I'll be very interested to see what becomes of that roster that was improbably in the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years ago.
God, this will resonate with Patriots fans of a certain age. I mean, certainly our age, but Patriots fans of the Tom Brady era. This is like the double bye week. You don't have to deal with the play-in tournament. Now you have the Hawks in round one. Chris is talking about Hauser and Davison, getting time in 30-point blowouts. Like, Blake Griffin's going to be averaging 10 minutes a game in this series. For anyone that missed it, the series schedule is out. Okay, it begins Saturday afternoon. We already knew that at the Garden, 3:30. And then very notable for
Twitter is quite ruffled by this.
Yeah, either ailing or aging big men or whatever. You got 2 days between games 1 and 2, and 2 days between games 2 and 3. So that's Tuesday in Boston for game 2. Game 3 is Friday in Atlanta, and then it's Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday as the series goes on. Should it go to 7, which, obviously the three of us do not believe that will be the outcome. So as far as rest coming in, I mean, just how big an advantage is that for Boston as it relates to not health per se, because again, injuries happen, you can't predict that, but just trying to maintain, keeping Al fresh, keeping Rob fresh, keeping Marcus fresh, attempting to, this series, attempting to keep Tatum and Brown's minutes down so they're not overworked in this series, if possible, if these games aren't close late. I mean, what is the objective, I guess, or is there a downside, Chris?
I'm almost worried that they're not going to have played enough basketball over the last 2.5 weeks. Like they were able to rest guys down the stretch of this regular season after 2 was locked in. So I almost feel like you gotta keep them paced. I could tell guys are just, even this week at practice, guys are anxious. I was telling you before we jumped on, it's weird to be on that treadmill and every other night you're playing, and then boom, the treadmill stops for a week. And so now we gotta gun it back up, and not only it goes up to a higher speed. So it's never a bad thing when you can get Al and Rob as much rest as possible. But I do think there's a balance to it, and I think they'll be appropriate. They know how to pace themselves at this point. I think one of the things Al said the other day was that last year, you dive in and you sweep the nets, and then you got a break, right? Like a little bit of, there was some time there, and it was good to have it. And then really from the start of the Milwaukee series straight through the end of the NBA Finals, it was wild. Like, it was just a tornado of basketball. And so I think they're appreciative of any breaks they can get. But yeah, if we're looking to things to lament, we'll lament like, oh man, did they have too much time off? Do they and I will relent. Like, let's see how the series is. I actually thought you were going to say that when you were pointing to the schedule that there's an NBA TV game in the mix, which people are very upset about, that the Celtics would be relegated to like a non-essentially national game. One, I'll remind everybody that every game is on NBC
I was
Sports Boston.
them all.
Yeah, and
round
so
one.
for round one, I need everybody to come hang out with us, and then especially for pre and post for the duration of the playoffs. But don't worry about what the national networks think of your basketball team. Come hang out with us.
Also, that's a Hawks problem, not a Celtics problem.
Yeah.
Also true. Can I just for giggles, for the sake of the podcast, can I devil's advocate this thing a little bit?
Oh, dude, I'm ready to go there.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to the same place. If we're not, go wherever you want to go as well. But is the Hawks the right matchup? And what I mean by that is the Heat would have been tougher. Like the Heat, I would have come on this podcast and said, I'm scared to death the Celtics are going to lose in round one. The Heat would have petrified me. Do I think the Celtics would have ultimately won? Yeah, I think it would have taken longer and I think it would have been harder, but it would have petrified me all the way through. The reason I even asked the question, though, is in terms of just getting prepared for what's to come, would the Heat, factoring in the layoff of a week, the space between the games, the fact that it shouldn't be a difficult series, ends in 4 or 5 games, would the Heat have been a better preparation for the Bucks and whoever else you're going to see along the way if the Celtics are fortunate enough to really go on a couple-month run here versus the Hawks, which feel like, they should be a pushover?
You're talking about like steel sharpens steel or something?
Yeah, I guess so, to some degree.
Let's just hope the Celtics don't need that at this point. I think like their steel got pretty sharp, like going through the Bucks and the Heat and the Warriors last year, and they know what they're in for. Like they know what we'll see how round one goes. They know what's coming for them after round one in these playoffs. Like there's no way there's any surprises about that. And I don't think I'm not like a huge believer in like rest for rest's sake. Like I think the teams are probably doing a good job of thinking about like how they need to rest guys, and that like maybe like we don't need to spend as much time thinking about that as we do sometimes. But like, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to have like a series that isn't exactly like sharpening your swords before you go into these much tougher series.
Chris, for you, give me the Hawks.
I feel like we're really struggling to just like inject some life into this series. Should we just preview Philly? Unfortunately, and maybe of course everything changes. We're suckers for recency bias. So maybe game one's close, and we're sitting here going, "Oh, okay, this is going to be a tougher series than you think," and certainly that could happen. And just there's no reason to believe that it's going to be just a complete breeze. But I just can't get myself. I keep waiting for something to be like, "Oh yeah, that worries me," and I'm just not there. I'm just not there.
I'm sure we all have worries about this team, like in terms of like what happened, I guess, mostly against the Heat and the Warriors is what I'm thinking about in last year's playoffs. But I don't know, like maybe we should talk about some of the things that worry us about the Celtics, like moving forward. It doesn't have to be about Philly in particular. No,
it's a good point. So, I mean, obviously, like I think we just fall back initially to what ailed them last year: ball security.
Yeah.
What happens when 3-pointers don't fall? Like, which feels like it's going to happen probably multiple times in the playoffs, where you got to manufacture beyond just what your sort of the tenets of your offense are. And so like, how do you respond to that? Thought it was notable. They were talking the other day about that, about like, okay, well, what do we do if things aren't working, and, being prepared for that, being prepared for like junky zone defenses, because Miami loved they hit them with those wrinkles last year. Those little things, and just like consistency from the bench.
Yeah, I mean, Tatum's going to go 4 of 18 a couple of times. So where's the offense going to come from?
And so is Malcolm Brogdon giving you that 6-man juice, like being the third superstar off the bench? Is Grant going to be like, Grant's probably the biggest wild card to me. He was awesome last playoffs. I'd feel a lot better if he had played to that level in the second half of the season and to the finish line of the year. But like he can erase a lot of the bad if he's good in the playoffs. And so little stuff, Rob's health, obviously just got to keep him upright, got to keep him looking spry. It was good to hear him saying he feels good. And those last couple of games, I thought one of those Toronto games, he looked really spry. I thought the Milwaukee game more than any, it just looked like, okay, wow, this is the guy that can be a difference maker. So there'll be some of that in terms of just feeling this team out. And we'll see how much we learn from round one. But just like you said, it's what would really inspire confidence is if this team came out and took care of business and understood it's the better team, and just like, which it hasn't done very often. So we'll see if it does that. But yeah, like it's weird. Like I like to bust Joe's chops about the whole 4-factor stuff, and he loves talking about the margins and like offensive rebound rate and free throw rate and all this. And I'm like, man, like nobody cares about, not nobody cares about that stuff, but like the casual, Seth, I know you care about it, but like casual fan isn't sitting there obsessing about 4 factors. And he'll read the box score to you at these post games. But those things will matter in the postseason, and the Celtics were not particularly good at some of those things last year, especially like, free throw rate and obviously turnover percentage. So
like one of the like it does go back to stats, but one of the kind of like mood things about this team is that I became sort of obsessed with last year in the playoffs is the way. Okay, so like the Celtics struggled in the half court last year in general, a pretty average half court offense last year. They've been an incredible half court offense this year. So that's a major difference in the regular season. But in the playoffs, it turned into this snowball effect where, because the half court offense wasn't good, and then they were struggling in transition defense, those things keep working. It's like like what do you call it? Like a Tesla coil. Like it just keeps like expanding. And so every time, you turn it over, they get an easy shot, then you have to set up your offense against that. So that's one of the patterns, I guess, that I'm just wondering. I mean, the half court offense has been so much better this year, but when you're hunting mismatches, is the ball going to move enough? I mean, could you get into some bad habits against the Hawks? I guess these are just some of the things, like when I started thinking about what happened towards the end of the playoffs. That like, what do the Jays do when things get tight? Are they willing to get off the ball and like set a pick and get it back? Or do they just try to put their head down and go to the basket? Because when teams have them scouted, it doesn't work that well.
I'm curious, Seth, when I brought up I wanted the devil's advocate, you were like in the front row of the roller coaster, pulling the bar down, getting ready for war. Where did you think I was going to go with that?
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about like later, like just things you're worried about with the team, which is where I ended up like wanting to go to. But like, just some of these things that happened last year in the playoffs. Like this year they're clearly like in a lot of ways a better team. 57 wins is a ton of wins. That's, what is that, like maybe the second or third most wins since Bird?
Yeah, I think we had the graphic. I think it was third.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like this was like a bad team this season by any stretch, but, you can see, the first month of the season, they come out and the ball is moving like crazy and they're dominant. And then the ball stops moving and they're not dominant. And sometimes it feels like maybe it's that simple. And teams do make it hard for you to do that in the playoffs.
And just the defense, from my perspective, is just like defense was their calling card last year. They always had something to lean on. Yep. And this year, it's crazy to look up and see their second in defensive rating because it doesn't feel that way. But, they've been very good in spurts, and they've been very good when they're healthy. And there's no reason to think it won't kind of go up a level. But you got to show it, and you got to do it on that stage. And and it'll look a little bit different too, right? Because Rod's not starting. So, I'm eager to see how exactly that plays out. How much Rob Al do we see? How much does Joe remember to really lean into Derek White and play him in the fourth quarters and crunch time and all that? So all that remains to be seen. But again, it's just weird. The Celtics usually we're talking about some crippling injury going into the playoffs, or like some something that needs to tip right. it's almost jarring that they're as healthy as they've ever been, and since the
Jesus,
Big Three era.
knock on wood.
Yeah.
What the hell are you doing?
No, but
Sorry.
to your point, they're good, and it does feel like they're good enough. They're still wondering if they'll do it, and I guess that's like a fun place to be as a fan, to know that your team is good enough to do it. But yeah, I mean, to your point, like the defense, it is true. It's like tempting to say they are still an elite defense. I guess you can't really argue against it, but maybe to your point about the 4 factors thing, like they don't really force turnovers, and that was a big part of. Maybe that's like that turnovers thing is where you go from just being like a really solid defense to being like whatever ferocious stuff was going on for the second half of last season, where it was like a pack of dogs were attacking the other team at half court. Like, yeah, it's different.
And I don't imagine there'd be much pushback from listeners, viewers, because it's largely a Celtics audience. But if there are any Hawks fans that are listening to this going, boy, you guys are cocky. I mean, there's a reason to be, honestly. I mean, it's a 57-win team as highlighted. It's a team that has, a guy who scored more points in a single season, at least average in Celtics history, in Jason Tatum eclipsing the 30-point-a-game mark. You have what should be 2 all-NBA players, provided Jaylen Brown does make it. You've got, quite possibly the 6th man of the year in Malcolm Brogdon. You've got the reigning defensive player of the year in Marcus Smart, a guy who I think is even better defensively, and Chris's, guy, Rob Williams. You got some good veteran leadership. Like, this team should be in the conversation for banner 18 and be among the elite in the NBA, just like we're talking about. And this series should reflect that, going up against a team that most thought was going to lose in the first round of the play-in tournament. So it's, it should be that lopsided, and it should be a series the Celtics go out and, again, take in 4 or 5 games, win by an average of 15 points a game, if not worse, and go away comfortably. And then obviously, like Chris alluded to before, get ready for Philly and Milwaukee and see where it goes from there. But what I will say, we were talking about worries before, and this is, you guys brought up worries that there's a history of. My worry is simply in the category of the unknown. It could be something I'm worried about for the next few days, and then 5 minutes into game 1, I'm not worried about it anymore. Jaylen Brown, we have not talked about in terms of the hand and the stitches. It's his shooting hand. This is a guy who exhibited a real trouble with turnovers in the postseason last year. I've never thought very highly of his handle in the first place. He can be pretty careless with the basketball, or reckless maybe is a better word for it. And so I do worry about that as it relates to, having stitches in the middle of your hand, and, or even the stitches are out, but like the wound, you know what I mean? Like I do worry about that. I'm not saying this is something that should be alarming. I'm not saying he's going to go out and suck. I'm not saying that, like he can't shoot and like all hope is lost. Like, people started to panic when he started wearing the mask for a couple of days. Well, the peripheral vision's gone. Like, the guy put up like 28 points a game, shooting over 50% wearing the mask. He was fine. He's still wearing it, and he doesn't need to. Maybe the hand won't be a concern at all, Chris, but until I see that it's not a concern, I am a little worried about it, which is, I guess, another advantage of the fact they're going up against Atlanta in round 1.
The jab would be he never had peripheral vision to begin with, but no, we're going to nitpick one thing. So I'll be interested. Like, we're recording this on Wednesday night. Thursday morning, we'll probably get a practice where we'll see Jaylen. He's supposed to be out there either Thursday or Friday. Maybe we'll get a better look at what exactly that gash is happening. Celtics have been alarmingly secure in the fact that it would not hinder him and that he'd be out there. The wrap itself on day 1 when he showed up at the game.
Oh, you think he put his hand through a window?
Yeah, people had flashbacks to Marcus Smart punching mirrors and the tearing ligaments and all that, but it feels like hopefully this was the garden variety gardening accident, and hopefully he will be okay. But yeah, it's certainly it's all part of it, right? Like, there's a million things we can worry about, and until I get out there and see what happens, I just choose to bury my head in the sand and believe that they can play to their potential. And yeah, we'll worry about that if he comes out and turns it over a bunch, or if he has any trouble shooting it. But just like you said, he got the mask, and I said, "Oh God, here we go." He's going to take away his aggressiveness going at the basket, and the drives went up. The finishing didn't seem to diminish. If there's one person who will probably be undeterred by the little stuff, I think it's Jaylen. But you know what? In the bigger picture, I hope we get Jaylen similar to last year when he was one of the best players on the team, maybe the most consistent. Because if they get that level of Jaylen, if they get end of this season level of Jaylen, I mean, they're you talk about being a legitimate title contender. I think we forget just how much he's kind of gone up a level. And as long as he's gets the ball security and does those things, you feel really good about where this team is.
Best part too with the mask and the fact that like he's been wearing it so long that even on the broadcast at this point in time, they'll acknowledge the fact that he doesn't really need it. And I'll be watching games with my oldest. He's 10 years old. And, Chris, as a parent, and it's like this is what I guess makes us feel old, but makes us feel like these like our parents in a way, these like sage, that call back to the other, the olden days, if you will, at least in our kids' eyes. It's like, why is he wearing the mask? Does he need to wear it? It's like, son, let me tell you about Rip Hamilton. Jaylen may never take that mask off again. Oh, it's quite.
We can only hope, because you've heard him say like his mom has told him to keep wearing it.
Yeah,
and I think Mama Brown might be the key to the 2023 Celtics championship, because one, she knows what's best for her son, and two, when something's working, don't deviate until you have to. And so I almost feel like he's a little bit more fearless with it. And so I hope that, maybe they need to find the mask version of whatever covers stitches to put on his hand, so that to ensure that, it just turns him into even more of a superhero.
Yeah. Can we get him like a Kevlar glove and maybe make it even a little bit like sticky, So
Perfect.
Yeah. Why'd that shot coming out of his hand? Well, it's worth it. It's worth the trade-off.
He's been playing I think some of the best basketball of his career over the last couple of weeks. So I guess the one thing I'm going to try to take their word for it that there's nothing really to worry about long term here, but
no history of that in the Celtics organization.
Right? Yeah, we're on safe ground there. But I will say, I don't know, you do these things. I guess these moods kind of exist, and maybe having to put the ball down for a few days could snap him out of whatever he's been doing that's been so good lately. But I worry about that less with him than other guys. I think he's so confident.
It's like the pandemic when we all freaked out that Jason Tatum didn't have a basketball hoop. And, it just
turns out he figured it out.
This is what happens when we have too much time. We find little things to obsess about when we could probably just be confident that they're in a good spot. They're really talented. It's just the anxiousness of waiting for this all to get going.
When you do, whether it's I assume Jaylen is going to have media availability, and you will all ask him about his hand and all of that. Even more than the condition of the hand, I'm curious as to how he got there, specifically in life. Is he a botanist on the side? What was happening here? When did we know that Jaylen had a gardening side of him?
Well, I mean, remember the tweet? He said, "Water your plants," like a month ago or something like that. We all thought it was the energy is about to shift tweet.
No, he quite literally meant to water your plants.
Yeah. And so what he needs to do is tweet, "Water your plants," carefully, so that just be careful. It's funny because we're always so skeptical, and everyone starts thinking about Rondo and the trampoline park or slipping in the shower or whatever. But the way he came out with it so quick, I think we almost had the trust that there was nothing nefarious here. But yeah, it's just a good reminder. It's wild that there's not more random freak injuries to pro athletes these days. I mean, I start thinking about like Brady. Didn't Brady have a finger thing? Like he cut it. Oh, he got caught on the helmet.
It got caught on Rex Burkhead's helmet. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Ripped his finger off practically.
That's a little bit more in the line of duty, but
no, I mean, what you're thinking of is like Chris Sale falling off his bike, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I'm glad that most of these guys probably lay low on days off or whatever. Like especially Rob, just please, Rob, nothing botanical, nothing, no trampoline parks with the kids. Like just lay low for the postseason and in June, just let it rip. I also think about Dennis Schroeder. Used to tell us like there was a clause in his contract that he couldn't skateboard.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And so good on GMs for looking out for their players and their assets and their team's ability to win by prohibiting them from doing crazy reckless activities. Like no one's going skydiving right now or anything like that. At least I hope not.
You can just see prospective teams giving their, any free agents, potential free agents or guys they would trade for a little questionnaire, a little survey. What are your hobbies? What are you into? Oh, skateboarding. All right. Write that into the contract. Can't do that anymore. Nope. Enough of that crap.
And Tatum just golfs. And now we're into golf season, so I feel pretty comfortable about that. Although I got
Golfson shows up in every commercial you've ever seen.
Yeah, so but there's still dangerousness out on the golf course. So keep him out of the line of fire. Maybe clear the golf course before he gets out there. Give him a nice breezy round.
They need to spend some time with Kaufman's DVD rack,
right? Yeah, just come over. We'll hang out. We'll get an advanced screening of Air. We'll all watch it together. Me and all the players. It'll be great.
Perfect.
Be awesome. I saw you were rocking the new Tatums, by the way, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to give them right back when I was done.
No, stop it.
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, that is true. They were just a demo pair. They just happened to be my size, and so we took them onto the set. I will say, having not other than just seeing him wear them, the most notable aspect is they're very light. I don't know if you've picked up a lot of these basketball shoes, but one, obviously NBA players' feet are gigantic to begin with, but then you pick up some of these high tops, and I mean Luke Cornett's shoes look like they weigh 20 pounds each because they're just gigantic.
The volume.
The Tatums are very light, and there's just like little plastic piece on the bottom that I don't know if that gives you extra spring or whatever, but it's a force plate. It is neat to see the inner workings of them, and I am more intrigued by when the multiple colorways will drop as he just has an endless stream of variations that have come out, and I think the Zoos are the only ones you can go get right now.
Are we obligated as Celtics fans to do the whole "these shoes are fire" thing, or can we say what we really think?
You are allowed to say whatever you think, and if I think I've been pretty honest in admitting that the Zoos are not my favorite colorway, and even when that first image leaked, everyone was like, "Oh, maybe it's just a bad photo." No, the darker blue. It's interesting. I suspect that the future colorways will sell even greater amounts of product. The pink lemonade, and he did one for his mom that was like a black and white and then highlighter yellow in there. I think these the creativeness of with which he's attacked the others will allow you to forget that version 1.0 is maybe not the most attractive shoe.
So Seth, you won't be buying those?
Do I look like I'm out buying fashion? I don't know anything. This is like the one part of the NBA I seem not to follow.
Yeah. Air was very good, by the way. I know, Seth, you're not into it at all, but Chris, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it.
Nice. Well, I'm going to have to put it on the list. I will. I'm only like 10 years behind on movies, so
you've got nothing but downtime now, man. You know, I mean, series to cover for another 3 weeks.
I'll show my age here. I don't even know if my age is the right thing, but just the way I gravitate. When I went to Atlanta and Houston to whatever that March road trip was, and I pulled up the in-flight entertainment, and of course, you're intrigued by some of the new releases are on there. Some of recently released. I watched Ferris Bueller on both trip there and back. So
one of Seth's all-time favorites.
Nice. So
the movie I've seen more than any other movie.
yes, and so if any of these young kids want to get on me about not watching something more modern, I weep for the future.
It's just all the what, Mia Sarah? Is that that's her?
Yeah, and then so and actually that's where I now I'm gonna take your podcast straight off the rails.
Please, we're long off the rails.
After you watch Ferris Bueller twice, you start thinking about some of those things, and you read her history, and she did some like sci-fi stuff, but really just kind of fell off the face of the earth, and went and became a mom, and just was okay.
She's a poet.
Yeah,
I remember Time Cop with Van Damme. I just want to
we know
you mention that.
I should have said she did some stuff and then fell off the face of the earth. But no, it is fascinating. And the even more interesting part, and I wish I could remember Hugh. It might have been like a John Hughes biography or whatever, but I guess when they put that cast together, and obviously every John Hughes movies had sort of a standard cast, and they took a real chance with Matthew Broderick and all that. So when they first took them out in the field to like just what they call wardrobe test, they're like, man, these three have no chemistry. This movie's going to bomb. Yeah, they did not have the right scouting report on Ferris Bueller.
Mia, if you're listening, welcome on the pod anytime. Big fan. Let's. I have stumbled upon her Instagram page and did see that she was a poet too. She looks like she has a lovely family. Let's wrap up this podcast and leave it with this. Celtics in, what will it be? How many games?
I'm going to say 5. I always lean towards the gentleman's sweep. I do think, and again, I can't tell you how it's going to be. I suspect it'll be more the Celtics missing a bunch of shots and the Hawks being super active on the glass, and they steal. I guess it would have to be game 3. Because Celtics win both here, they go back there. If they take game 3, then it's 3-0. It's 1-2-3 Cancun for the Hawks. But I suspect they'll get some energy going back home, and the Celtics will be feeling pretty good about themselves. There'll be that long layoff in between. There's plenty of excuses we can build in immediately here, and so I'll say 5 for round 1.
Yeah, it feels like 5. 5 feels right to me. 4, a sweep feels wrong. 5 feels right.
Yeah, right there. Like I said, I've already put money on it. So thanks to Amit, thanks to Mike behind the scenes, thanks to Evan just for being you and for taking the show next week, hopefully wrapping up an opening series win.
You're thanking people that aren't even here?
Yeah, look, so there are a lot of people that make this show possible, Chris.
Thanks to Mia Sarah.
Yeah, thanks to Mia Sarah for being a nightly inspiration for so many of us of a certain age. And thanks to Seth, thanks to Chris. I'm Adam. We'll see you later at Celtics Beat. Go Seas, Saturday, game 1.
Thank you, Abe Froman.